Okay, so with our first project has gone for try-in and verified vertical dimension, aesthetics, midline, shade, lip support, buckle corridor support, possibly even tested the length of how much we want to, if at all, engage the soft palate with the post dam. I did not put one in at the try-in stage. I've just marked out here, just for illustration, that we've kind of, this theoretically should be a border molded impression, and it was, but we still got to read the impression and outline where the attached and detached mucosa, or where we believe this junction to be, for the full extension of our, around the frenum here as well, and for our try-in. So we did our wax up. As you can see, there's our line here, and we were very close to a wax up for try-in. The try-in closely resembles the finished product, and some festooning, as we discussed earlier. So now we've, now we've received the denture back, and it's proceed to finish. I mean, we've disinfected it, and now it's time to finish. And the dentist has given us an extension here. And if they did not, which most of them don't, we can simulate, and we don't have to simulate. I can see the palatine fovea, and then a millimeter anterior to that roughly would be our post dam. This is the junction of the hard and soft palate, the vibrating line, so to speak. With some experimentation, if we're engaging some of the soft palate, if the patient can tolerate this extension, I think retention is increased. Although academically, basic dentures were just on the junction of the hard and soft palate, and traditionally we have this type of post dam. The mid-palatine raphe is very thin because there's a bone in the suture, and not much soft tissue, and then it kind of flares out. Something like this, I think, would be our all the way back to the Air Force manual. Today's advent of digital and especially injected resins, I've created some dentures without a post dam, and I've created an excellent seal. This post dam seems to be a latent gene of the single phase polymethylmethacrylates, which had a increased level of shrinkage or dimensional instability during processing. So we've just kind of maintained these kind of behaviors, like we're going to gouge out here. In the production laboratory, I mean, they think they utilize this so the waxers can communicate with the trimmers and say, this is where you're going to trim the denture to, the production laboratory. Trimmers have no idea academically of where it should finish. They haven't seen the model. So I've kind of ditched it at the back here and then feathered it out here into the midpoint, the butterfly, so to speak. And you can use your number 7 or a sharp tool. Please do not use a burr. If I'm really aggressive here, it's just going to cause denture adjustments. After a week of wearing this denture, patient will come back and there'll be a, edematous tissue here at the back, almost like a blistering, and saying, well, I think we've engaged a little too much. So I've done my post dam, and we did our wax for try-in, and now this is what we'd call wax for finish. So I'm going to fill the model, if I can outline it, right to the land area with wax. If I fill right out to the land area, it's going to be two things. Easier to, there'll be more trimming. Let's talk about the negative. But we'll have a easier investing, because we're going to invest right here to the outside of the model. And then this should be the same. We're talking split pack investing now. And then the acrylic will be extruded right roughly at the level of the junction of the first and second layer of or first and second half of the flask. And this is what we want. We want the expellation of plastic right at the level. We want the plastic to go through a serpentine type of obstacle course to get out of the flask. I mean, it's just more pressure needs to be applied, and then we are going to run the risk of, open bites and not getting it closed completely under. I think standard processing is under 100 bar. If we choose to go any higher, we run the risk of fracturing the stone, especially if there's any sharp undercuts on the ridge, as the compressive strength of stone is just slightly higher than that, depending if it was mixed with the proper measurements. I'm just averaging now, depending on the stone. If we use a dye stone, this has a high compressive strength, and sometimes with undercuts, it's very difficult to remove the denture, as the plastic will tend to, unless you surgerize the model or take it apart in pieces, the plastic will break. The denture will crack before the model will. So I think a stone is hydrocal or calcium sulfate. Hemihydrate would be the proper model base for processing dentures, which we've used here. And I'm filling all the way up here. Now I'm overextending, obviously, and creating extra trimming flash. But this is wax for finish versus wax for try-in. Now, let's say in my generation here, we've done, we would take a saw and cut out the palate to ensure the thickness is equal to the palate. But those were the days of the shellac base plate, which was very thin, and we added wax to it, and it wasn't really consistent. So I think it would be easier. We're going to leave our light cure base, which is obviously slightly thicker than the denture base that we're going to have when we're finished. And this is obviously a preference of the dental technician. How thick are we going to leave this palate for the patient? Very thick, they're going to have some phonetic issues. Speech issues, phonetic issues, deglutation issues, proprioception of the food issues. Too thin, we run the risk that, is it strong enough to maintain the occlusal load? So I think it depends on the amount of atrophy of the patient, the age of the patient, the sex of the patient, size of the ridge. Is there any undercuts on the ridge? There's a lot of factors here determining this. But generally, whatever thickness, we want a consistency to the denture base here in the palate, to contour closely to the client's natural vaulted shape. Now, naturally, if there was any teeth moved at the try-in or a check bite was done and we moved some teeth, we'd go back and festoon those teeth and keep wax off the teeth. And here I'm just adding a little bit here, kind of blending it in with the post-dam area that I've added. A little extra is not going to hurt. Although some real, denture engineers are going to say, well, you've increased the thickness, you're going to increase the shrinkage of polymerization. But today's acrylics are a lot better in dimensional stability. They can be abused more. They cross-link more, meaning there's less free monomers. And the dimensional stability through polymerization, the contraction or shrinkage, so to speak, is less. But now generally in polymerization, the shrinkage it's a dual phase polymerization, where those under heat and pressure initiates the propagation of the polymer chain and opens up those bonds. So with the dual phase polymerization, it's more dimensionally stable, as well as these thick pallets aren't as lifting as much as they used to off the palate. So it would shrink from the thickest part because we're heating from the outside of the flask, and the acrylic will tend to migrate to where the heat source is. And then, we had the advent historically of microwave dentures where, the heat source is from the palate, and therefore we're thinking it's shrinking towards the heat, the center, and we have less lifting of the palate. But through some of my own experimentation, the retention gained here in our impression from our border mold, from the post-stem, sealing off the attached mucosa, this minor shrinkage of the palate is insignificant. It doesn't manifest into, like, super ill-fitting dentures that need to be relined. I mean, I haven't seen that for 30 years because this injection plastics technology and the polymerization, which is a lot better. Be careful if you're using alcohol torch, don't splatter wax up on the teeth. This is going to affect our investing. Nice and smooth. I'm using the alcohol torch here to, if you have any voids in your plastic, now's a good time to fill them in with a little bit of wax. If I overextend here at the back, that's fine too. If you want to add wax all the way to the back, that's fine too. Because now when I'm thinking of anticipating what's going to happen, I either got to invest to the back here where my thumb is, or I got to hold the model down and go here. Just maybe to make my investing easier. Because if I overlap this soft palate here with the first layer of stone or a half and half mixture, it's so thin, the model's separated, it'll probably flake off during the boil out, and I'm going to add all that plastic in there anyways. And then I run the risk of having this plastic break off during the packing and get inside the denture. So this is not going to hurt either. More trimming, yes, but seconds. I'm not going to make a huge thickness here. So now I can invest right here. And our model, which was in the model trimmer, is tapered. It wasn't at 90 degrees, the base. It was tapered maybe at 5 degrees. Or conversely, obtusely 95 degrees, if you want to think of it that way. And then therefore the undercut of the model will devest easier and still will be held down. We don't have to worry about the model falling out unless you've gone really overzealous with the Vaseline or water glass. So my next step here is to soak the model in water before investing. A lot of people in the industry say, well, why are you soaking the model? You don't have to. But I always err on the, safe side, where if we were to somehow get distracted and overboil this or soften the wax, because really we're not boiling out the wax, we're softening the wax. But if we ended up boiling the wax, it gets impregnated into the stone, therefore creating more detergents to be used to extrapolate the wax from the model. And then therefore, if the model is saturated with water, less chance for wax to be impregnated into the model, and therefore our separator or denture separator film will not be kind of, repelling off the model because of a wax residue inside the base. We'll have a nice homogeneous layer of denture separator that sits on the model and penetrates the model. If the model's penetrated with wax and we can't get it out, the denture separator will just repel, like oil and vinegar. And I'm sure you've seen that in your previous denture procedures, possibly, if you didn't eradicate all the wax. So we need to make sure that we're just softening the wax. If we don't soften the wax enough, then we open the flask. We'll probably chip all these gingival margins off because there's undercuts. The teeth will want to be retained. The teeth will want to be retained in the wax. So I'm just going to smooth out the denture base around the flange here. I'm going to add in my brilliant festooning and anatomical trimming after with my burrs. Please don't go around the gingival margin with the alcohol torch. If you need to kind of refine any margins, you can do so. Go with a microscope. Make sure there's no wax here at the margins or on the facial buccal side of the teeth, nice and clean. And then soak the model, and then we'll invest it.